So let me give you a quick summary of what we'll be doing today. As you can see on your screens, we can first we'll be starting with the basics of JavaScript. Then we'll be moving to introduction of Node.js and how Node.js is used. And we'll be putting some special emphasis on how we can use Node.js without any other outside packages. So we'll show you how the crux of Node.js works. And then to make it a little bit simpler, we'll be using Express to just tone down the lines of code, if you may. Okay, so let's begin. So first of all, JavaScript, there's a lot of text on your screen. If you want, you can go through it. I'll just give you a quick summary. JavaScript, as you can see, is a programming language, and it's used in both the backend and the front end. So in this way, it's a very unique language. If you compare it with other languages like Java, C++, or Python, their use cases only lie in the backend because they are very useful in calculations and everything. But JavaScript is a unique language in that sense because you can make full stack apps with it. And here you can see something called ECMAScript. What ECMAScript is basically, you can see the full form here. It's a set of rules and standards that JavaScript follows. Moving on, JSON. So this is a very important part of JavaScript, I would say. It's very essential. We will be using JSON today, and I'll be showing you in code what it means and what it does. For now, let's just understand that it's a JavaScript object notation. It's a way of representing JavaScript objects. And this is how it looks like. It has curly braces around it. And each property, or a key, if you say, is put in quotation marks and then the value it holds. So if you can see, name has a value, John Doe, age has a value 25, and marks is an array. So these pairs are called key value pairs. If you would have done, if you are familiar with Python, you would have seen this in a dictionary, which is very similar to this. So this is how it works, and the key value pairs are there. So I am hoping that you guys have downloaded the folder that was provided to you. It would be looking something like this. There would be one file in it, index.html. Don't worry about this file right now. When we will be using this file, I'll be explaining to you what the code inside it is. And inside this folder, let's just create a new file. If you're in VS Code, just open the folder, whichever text editor you're using, just open the folder there and hit this icon for VS Code for new file and create a new file called app.js. Okay. If you don't find the icon, just right click here on the sidebar and you should see an option of creating a new file, right? Okay. So I hope you guys have a new JavaScript file with you. Now let's just see how JavaScript works. So for declaring variables, you could use something like var. First of all, let me show you the old way. If you would be familiar with C or something, so you'll be very familiar with this line of code right here, int a equal to 5. What this means is a is a variable which is of type integer and it holds the value 5, right? Very similarly in JavaScript, we can write var a equal to 5. JavaScript doesn't have fixed types. So right now, because we have given it a number, if you hover over a in VS Code, you'll get that it's a number. But you can also change it. And if you want, you can give it any other value. And you don't need to change anything in the var. Okay, so it's there. And let's just see how we print out something. So in C, you would be very familiar with printf. In Java, it's system.out.println. Similarly, in JavaScript, it's console.log. All right, and whatever you want to print goes inside it. Make sure it's console.log and then parenthesis and a. All right. So let's just run this piece of code and see how we run a JavaScript file. Today there are multiple ways of running JavaScript files because today we are using Node. So let's just use it. So in the terminal, you'll have to type node space app.js. This command will be provided to you in the chat box if it's hard to read. All right. So if you want, you can also remove the .js because what Node does is it automatically looks for JavaScript files. So you don't have to provide the extension as such. And now if you hit enter and give it a second. Yeah. So it should just give you the output, which is 5 because that's what we are printing. So as I was saying, there are 3 ways of declaring variables. All right. One is var a, One is let A and another one is const A. Now, if you know, like if you notice, let me just write down all of them. So, yeah, so one difference is pretty clear right from the go is that it says const, which means that it's a constant. You can't change the value of A later. But these two you can change. But these two have a subtle difference in scope. I'll just be coming back to it in a few minutes when I'll be talking about functions. Yeah, so let's get rid of this now and show you how objects work. So if I declare an object called A, we just now saw the syntax in the JSON slide, but it's slightly different if you notice. Yeah. And age, another value 20. Make sure in between two different properties you put a comma, all right? And whenever you put a string value, you need to put it inside quotes. And these are properties, so you don't need to put quotations around it. That's how a JavaScript object looks like. If you want to make this a JSON, there's not much difference. Just put these around quotations and just put these around quotations, right? Whenever you have the keys also in quotations, that means it's a JSON object. And just as per standards, you should not use single quotes. It will not give you any problem, but just it's the standard. Now let's see how this works. How we can we access a code, all right? Or access an object. If I just console.log A again, it will not be much different from last time. So whatever you gave the value is the same which comes up in the console. How you can access the internal properties is with the dot operator. If I console.log age, a.age, the output we get is 20 because that's what the age is. All right, that's how we access an object. And one more command prompt tip, many of you might know this, but if you're running the same command again and again, instead of typing it out, you can just hit the upper arrow and it will take whatever last command you run and it will run that. So that's a helpful tip. All right, let's move forward now. Now let's talk about equivalency in JavaScript. Okay, so if you write a condition, let's just console log the condition directly so that it will be easy. So if you write a condition like this, a1 double equal to 1, right? You would have seen the double equals in other languages also. What it does is basically compares the left hand side and the right hand side and returns a Boolean value, right? If you run it, let's see what happens in JavaScript. You get true, which is expected. Now let's put quotations around this. In JavaScript, that's how equivalency works. When you are using only double equal tos, it only checks the value of LHS with the RHS. It does not care about what the type is. When you always saying that variable type is different, that comes into play when you're using triple equal to. When you use triple equal to and then you run the app, then you run the file, sorry, you will get false. All right, because when you use three equal tos, the compiler, what it does is it checks the LHS and the RHS, the value, as well as what type is it. So right now the value is 1 on both sides. That's okay. But this is a number and this is a string. And why is it a string? Because I'm giving quotation marks around it. So it gets converted to a string. It is treated as a string. So one more time, if I do it with two equal tos, it will give me true because it's the same value. With three equal tos, and if I remove the quotes and only one, then it should give me true. Let's move ahead to functions. How do we write a function? So if you just go back to C for a minute, if I write int add, int add a comma b, return a plus b. I hope you will be very familiar with this type of writing functions. It will not be super weird to you. If it is, then let me just tell you what this is. Here we used to write the return type of the function, and then this was the function name. These were the parameters, and inside the function, whatever we want to do. So only one thing changes in JavaScript is that there is no return type. We just tell the system that it's a function. That's all. Use the function keyword, then we write the function name, then the parameters, and then whatever you want to do inside curly braces. Console.log And let's just print this. No. So just make it look a little better. Let's just use a variable for this so that it's not so preoccupied. Right? Now it must be clear. We are running the function add with the parameters 4, 5. We are storing whatever result comes into A, and then we are console logging A. All right, let's run this. Yeah, so we get 9. Now earlier when I was talking about ECMAScript, I told you that there are standards which come out every year. All right, these are in the these are called like ES 2020 for this year. Last year it was ES 2019. All right, so that's how it comes out. But earlier what used to happen was the new standards only came after like 5 or 6 years. So whenever a new version came, it brought along a lot of changes. Okay, so let me just show you a new type of writing functions came along with ES6, which came out in 2015, I think. All right, let me just type everything out and I'll show you what's the difference. Well, you'll see the difference, but let me just show you. All right, so what function I wrote right now will give me the same output. Let me just comment it out. If you're wondering how did I comment out multiple lines, it's just a shortcut in VS Code. You select multiple lines and hit Control plus /. All right, and now let's take this into a variable, add A, B, and console log it. Let me just run it and check. Yes, it's still 9. So this type of functions are called arrow functions in ES6. All right. The way you write them is you define a variable, which actually becomes the name of the function because you're calling it from here. And then you put an equal to sign. And to that variable, you assign a proper function. And this function is an arrow function. Why is it called an arrow function? Because if you see, this is an equal to and a greater than sign, which looks like an arrow. And it's called a fat arrow. So this is how an arrow function looks like. The only changes, if you see, is before the curly braces. Once the curly braces come, there's exactly the same as the last example we saw. So that's how it works. These are the parameters, and then this is the fat arrow. The reason I'm telling you this is because when we'll be writing code in Node.js, we'll be using this type of functions a lot. All right. So make sure you're familiar with this format of writing functions. Now, one advantage that these kind of functions got us was that if you see inside this function, we only have one line of code. That's all we are writing, and we are only returning it. That's all we have done. So there's a shorthand for writing this. Shorthand means basically you can think of it as a shortcut. You can just remove the curly braces. You can remove the return keyword. Now, how arrow functions work is that whenever there's an arrow function without curly braces and without anything else, or it's only one line of code. So it will compute that line of code, and whatever it brings, it will return it to the function. All right. So if I run it this again, it will again give me 9. Because in arrow functions, when you're only writing one line of code and that's returning something, you can just get rid of return and whatever you write will be returned. All right. Make sure you're okay with this because we'll be needing this ahead. So let's move forward from arrow functions now. Yes. So if you can see, I'm using let here. Let's talk about this a little. What is let and how does it differ from var? Okay. Let me just create a variable here called 5. And I'll just write a conditional, which is if a is greater than 3, then var b equal to 2. And after this, let's just console.log b. Let's just see what happens when I run this code. Okay, first of all, yes, so just run this code. You can see it gives me the value 2 because a is 5 is greater than 3 and we are assigning b to 2. We are assigning 2 to b and then we are console logging it, and that's what we get. But if I change it to let, then it won't. Let's see what happens. we are given an ugly error. One more command prompt tip I would like to give you right now is whenever you get an error in the command prompt, if for sure it looks ugly, it has like 10 lines of error, and we don't even have 10 lines of code. We have 7 lines of code with some spaces. So what you do in such kind of a situation is go scroll up, and whenever you run the function, just 2 or 3 lines below it, you will get a name of the error and whatever happened, the main message. Just focus on this. You can just ignore the other parts for now. It doesn't matter. So it says B is not defined. So why does it say B is not defined? Is the basic error between var and let. When we are using var, basically what it does is it has a file-wide scope. Whenever you use var, it can be accessed anywhere in the file. But when you use let, it can only be accessed in what block it was run in. So it is only accessible within these curly braces, not outside it. And that's why we are getting an error in this. I hope that's clear. Okay. So let me just quickly tell you a little bit about some array functions. So if you just write down an array like 1, 2, 3, 4, and if you had to iterate through this array, the way you do it in other languages is by using a for loop, right? But in JavaScript, there's an easier way of doing it by running a function called for each. How it looks like is array. Let's just name this something else like num. Then you're writing a function if console.log num. Okay, let's see how this is. This is a for each function which we are calling on the array by using the dot operator. Then inside the curly braces, we have a parameter. We have an attribute of the function. We are writing a function basically. So this is a parameter of the function, which is num. What you can name it whatever you want. This basically represents one element of the array. So it says for each, and that's what it does. It just takes this, takes whatever function you write inside it and runs it for every possible element in the array. So if I run it right now, you'll see that I get all the elements of the array. That's what for each does. It's just iterates through the entire array. All right. There's one more function which I would like to touch upon because we'll be using it later. It's filter. And okay, so let's just type this out for now. 1 second. Filter. Filter is very similar. You'll provide it a function and it will run the function on each of the objects. But the difference here is that you have in the function, you have to return a Boolean value because it will filter through the array. That's what it does. It filters the array. So let's just say num double equal to 1. All right. So if you run this function for every possible element of the array, and if you remember in the arrow syntax, whenever you don't write anything, it gets returned, right? So it's going to return a Boolean value as we saw earlier. So it will return a Boolean value. So for all these elements, it will only return true for the first element, right? And when this filter runs, it returns a new array. It returns the filtered array. So let's just save it in a variable A and console log the variable A. Let's just run this again. Okay, so as you can see, the new array only contains one element 1. If you would change the, let's just change the condition inside this. Let's say mod 2 double equal to 0. Now, by this time, if you would have done C and your elab and everything, you would know this is a very popular conditional to see if the number is even or not. So this will only return true for numbers which are even. You would know. So let's just run the file again. This time it gives you 2, 4. So this, as you can see, it only returned true for 2 and 4, and that's why only those two numbers are there in A, and it doesn't change the actual array. All right, the original array remains the same. If you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, and if you notice, I'm just changing whatever I want and running the code side by side, but actually you need to save the file after every change you make. So in VS Code, there's an option of auto saving the file. I've turned it on by default. You should do it too. So it becomes easier. It saves all the changes and I can run it whenever I want. Let's move on to Node. What exactly is Node? The definition you can see on your screens. It's the technical way. I'll try to explain it in layman's terms. Once you know JavaScript, as I already told you, That's already used in the it's also used in the backend as well, right? So how do we use it in the backend is by making use of Node.js. Node.js is a runtime environment which helps us to use JavaScript in the backend. So this shows the importance of Node.js. Like you can see some very big companies like Netflix, Uber, Medium, PayPal, LinkedIn, everybody uses Node.js. And in this lockdown, I'm sure most of you would have played this game, Scribble.io, and even that uses Node.js. So you can think of it this way, that once you know Node.js, you can create such a popular platform also, and just everybody will use your product. All right. So that's it for the theoretical part. Let's just move to writing some code now. All right. So let's just clear everything we had before and run a command. Just run a command npm init -y. This will be provided in the chat box if it's hard to read. So let's just discuss what this is. npm stands for Node Package Manager. Whenever you use an outside package or a module, all right, you need a package manager. The two famous ones are Yarn and npm. Today we'll be discussing about npm. So npm is a Node Package Manager. It helps us to use outside packages. As I said earlier, the first part of this workshop will not be using any outside code. We'll be writing everything in Node.js. So we don't need it right now, but let's just initialize the npm repository to make sure we have the correct structure. So if you run npm init -y and just hit enter, it will take a couple of seconds to run. Let's just give some time. You guys can also run it in your command prompt. It will be the same command if you're running it in your command prompt or in the integrated terminal. It doesn't differ. So once it's done and it's run, you can see a new file in your folder, which is package.json. If you click on it and view it, it will contain some general information about your project, right? So first thing will be a name. By default, it just takes up the name of your folder. Mine was named workshop 2. Whatever your folder was named, it will show up here. All right. Then it's some generic info. One main thing to notice is the main. It says here app.js, and because why is it? Because we already had a file which said app.js there. We already had an app.js file, so it recognized that we already have a JavaScript file, and it made that the main file. If we didn't have any JavaScript file here and we ran this command, it will give it as index.js. And what this helps us to do is, when we are writing node space app to run the file, instead we can only write node, and we'll know that we have to run the app.js file because that's what provided in the main. That's it for now in this file. We can move ahead. And one more thing, the flag that we use. If you see, we use the -y flag in the command. Why we used it was because all of this information, it would have asked from us in the command prompt. To just prevent that and make it a little faster, we just use this flag. Otherwise, we would have given this information. -y just gives a yes to everything it asks for, so it just puts in default values according to its liking. So that's done. Now let's move to some actual backend development and create a HTTP server. All right. So for this, we need the module which is HTTP. Mind you, it's not an external module. It just comes built in with Node.js. So you can write something like const HTTP, which is a variable. And now we need a module. How do we need import or require a module is this way. Require HTTP. This is the syntax. Get very familiar with this line because you'll be using this in every Node.js project you use. So require basically means that we are requiring a module. If you hover over this in VS Code, it says it's a module which is HTTP. So it's a built-in module with Node.js and we are requiring it. Now let's see how we can use it. For now, let's just create a variable called server and use the built-in function that we get with the HTTP module, which is create server, or give it a function. So how this works is, when we create a server, we need to give it a function handler. This on request is actually a function which we'll be writing. It's not something built in. We'll be writing this function, and that will handle whatever requests this HTTP server gets. All right. So let's just code out this function also. Function on request. And here comes the most important part in backend development. the two parameters, request and response. Make sure the order is this. That's the order. First the request, REQ, and then the response, RES. How this works is, just think of a client server architecture. What the client server architecture is, like for example, you're watching something on Netflix, all right? So you are the client, your browser, if you're watching it on the browser, your browser is the client. And let's say you click on some series like Stranger Things. If you click on Stranger Things, a request is sent from your browser, which is the client, to the Netflix server, and it says that this person wants to watch Stranger Things. Then the server responds with a link or with the files, that these are the files which he'll be needing to watch the series. All right, and that's called the response. So whatever the client sends to the server is the request, and whatever the server sends back to the client is a response. I'll be showing you more things on how this works. For now, let's just send a response. All right, let's write a response, something like hello from node, right? This res.write. Right now I said that res is the response object, and this is how the server sends something back to the client. And this write function, write method, is used to do what it says, basically write something out. And then we have to end the response all the time, because the client needs to know that when the response has ended coming from the server. Because if we don't tell it to end, the client will never know when to stop. It will just keep looking for some information to get. All right. Now this server variable that we just created, we need to make this run somewhere. So how do we do that is, we write server.listen and give it a port number. Now think of port number as if you think of a ship harbor. All right, there are different ports for every ship. Every ship has a designated place where it can go. Similarly, our computer has thousands of ports, and we can tell it which port to run on. Our server needs a port, and we tell it to run on 4000. That's what this line is doing. We are telling the server to listen on the port 4000. All right. Now this time, if you run the file, node app, the same as before, you would see you don't get anything in the console, but it's running. Because earlier whenever we used to run something, it used to give this path again. This time it's not, which means it's running. Now I would like you to go back to your browser, open a new tab, and just go on localhost -4000. All right, localhost -4000. It would be given in the chat box if it's difficult to read here, and just hit enter. It will take some time, and it will show up hello from node. Now one thing, that when we run the app, we don't get any confirmation that it's working. We went to the browser to check if it worked. So let's just improve on that. In this server.listen, inside this parentheses after 4000, just put a comma, put a pair of parentheses, put the fat arrow, just like a function we are writing, and type put a console log statement here. Write whatever you want. I'll just write server is running so that I know that it worked all right. Now what this syntax is, it's called a callback function. It can get a little tricky to understand, but for now, let's just understand that whenever you put this inside a function call after the comma, what it basically is doing is that whatever this method is, like listen. So when we are running server.listen, the node makes sure that once the server.listen function is done running and it's completed, then the callback function is run. What function you provide here. I hope this syntax is clear to you, because I explained it earlier, the arrow function, that's how it looks like. And we are writing just one line here, which is console.log. So let me just show you how it works. If I run the app again, this time see it says server is running, all right, because that's what I put here. So it ran the server.listen function. It ran successfully on port 4000, and then I'm just outputting to the console to let me know that the server is running. Let me just show you one more interesting thing with regards to write head. Write head is a method which comes built in. with the response object. And what this expects is we are writing a header file. What a header is, it can get a little bit complicated. So let's just say that headers are needed between client and server communication to pass on some extra information. Like right now, I'm passing on a header which says, first of all, it says 200, which is an HTTP status code for all is okay. You can read more about it later. And the header, actually the header property, you can see it's again a object with the curly braces and the quotes and the key and value pair. The key here is content type and the value here is text/HTML. If you can't read it properly, Avichal, if you could just share this line in the chat. So what this does is whatever the server returns to the client, all right, it will show that in that format. So let's just go with an H1 tag here. For those who attended the previous workshop, this will look very familiar. We discussed what an H1 tag is. For those who didn't, don't worry. H1 tag just means that it's a big text. That's all. It's bigger than normal text. Let's just say it like that. Okay. So as you can see, it didn't make any change. Now, why is that? Because after changing the file, we didn't rerun the Node app. So that can get a bit complicated. So to avoid running the app again and again to see all your changes, I would recommend using a package which is called Node1. How you install it is you write the command npm, because that's the package manager we are using. Then you put in an I. I basically stands for install. You can also write install, but I is just shorter. So you can write npm I node1-g. Now what the -g means is that it's a global package. All right. So it's getting installed everywhere on your system and not this folder alone. Why we installing it globally is because it's a very needed package during your development. So it's better to just install it on your system and you can use it in every folder. You will get this command in your chat box. You can just copy paste it and run it. I won't be running it here because I already have Node1 installed. So yes, so we'll be having the, I also already have the Node1 package. So you just install it. And after you're done installing it, you can run the file. Instead of writing Node app, you can write Node1 app. I'll show you in just a second how is it different. Yes. So now you can see it says some things, and in the end, it says starting node app.js. So behind the scenes, it's actually running what we wrote earlier, also node app, but this time it will just restart the server whenever we make any changes. So for example, if I add 2 more exclamation marks to it and I save the file, it's auto saved. So as you can see, it restarted again due to the changes. So this is a good tool to have. If you face any problems during installation of Node1, just ignore it. It's not really necessary, but make sure every time you have to rerun the server whenever you make any changes. Now this time, if you refresh, now you will see that this comes up as larger text. And why this is? Because in the header, sorry, not this. Yes, in the header, you wrote it as text/HTML. Let me just change it to text/plain and let's see the difference. Let the server restart. Right, 1 second. Yeah, so this time if you refresh, if you can see, it just prints out the actual text, whatever was written, even the H1 tags. So you don't really want it. So whenever you want to output HTML, just change it to HTML and not plain. Okay. Now just let's look at different endpoints and how we can access them. If you notice something right now, if you go to localhost 4000, it says hello from node. If you go to localhost 4000/add, it will also say hello from node. So it doesn't really change no matter what I write here. It's just giving me the same output again and again. So it's not really useful. So let's just change this and make it look for particular things. So for this, we'll need another built-in module, which is the URL module. Const URL equal to require URL. This is also a built-in module, so we still haven't installed any dependencies apart from Node1, which is optional. So this URL module, what this does is, let me show you. Let's just create a variable called link and use the URL and use this request.url and true. So now, as I said earlier, request is the request body is something which is sent from the client. All right. So that request contains a property called URL. The URL is whatever we type in the browser, as you will already know. So what we are doing is we are using the URL module and passing it. Passing basically means converting. And the second parameter, which is true, is basically to tell the parser that we need it to be converted into a JSON or a JavaScript object so that we can access anything which is inside it. So for now, let's just console log this and see what it gives us. All right. So if you go back to your browser now and whatever URL you have, just refresh it. In your console, sorry. In your console, you will have the link, have the object which we got from url.parse. So if you look at this, there's a lot of things here, but there's 2 or 3 things which we require right now. First one is path name. So it will tell you whatever you write after the slash. Right now we had the slash arindam, which I wrote. So that's why it's coming like that. So let me show you how this will actually be useful for us. So after this, let's put the conditional of this line. We'll have a conditional link dot path name triple equals slash add, and we'll write res dot write. Yes. So one more thing, when you only have one thing to output, so you can directly write res dot end and then write whatever you want here. So we can say this is slash add, right? And you don't need to end it again because only there's only one thing which you are writing, so we can write it like that. Else if another path which we can write is link dot path name triple equals slash sub, if you may. Okay, sorry. Will be normal parenthesis here. Sorry about that. Yes. If you just go here and inside this else, you can write res dot end. This is slash sub. So let me show you how it works. Now we can just remove this because we don't need these, and the function, the server will be restarted again, I hope. Yes, it's running. And also if you have nodemon running and also autosave on, so while you're typing out the code, there'll be several errors that pop up on the console because it will just keep on restarting in every file change. So sometimes when you have incomplete code, it will throw up an error, but don't worry about it. Whenever you have the complete code, it won't matter that much. Let's just go to slash add now. We can see it says this is add. And if we go to slash sub now, it should say this is sub. So we have some differences now, and that's how the API will work. You will see it later. Now, one more thing I'd like to touch upon is something called get and post requests. Okay, I'll write out the code first and I'll explain it later. If you write request.method triple equals get, and you change it to this is get request, and I hope you know what this double ampersand is doing. It's two conditions, and when both of them are met, that's when the if condition will return true. All right. So get and post, and let's just write this is post request. Okay. So before this, you just have to write one more if condition to serve the file. If link dot path name equals slash. Now we want something, right? As we saw earlier, this basically means when it's at localhost 4000. It doesn't really matter between localhost 4000 and localhost 4000 and a single slash, nothing else after it. Okay. Here we want to output this index.html file that we have. Okay. So let's just go, and we have to import another package for this, which is fs. This is the file system. All right. You just have to write this again the same way you wrote for HTTP and URL. And in fs, you have a function which is read file. How this works is, first you provide the link of the file that you want, sorry, the path of the file. This dot slash basically means that it's in the same folder as this app.js file. Okay. And then index.html, which is the file that we want to show it. And then similarly, as we had a callback function here, which ran after the listen worked, similarly, we'll have a callback function here also inside this after read file is done running. Here we'll have two parameters, error and data. Error will contain something if there is an error in the reading of the file. So let's just put it in error. So if there is an error, that's what this if condition does. We want to send a response back to the server saying, back to the client, saying that error occurred, so that the client knows. And if there was no error, then we can write out res.write and the data. Now what the data here is the content of the whatever file we write down here. So this will contain whatever content is there in the index.html file. Okay. And that is what is there in data. And let's just end the response here. So if you now go back, now we have written a lot of code. So I hope you all are following me right now. We have three pathways here, three endpoints here. First one is slash, which is the home endpoint, which only if you type localhost 4000. Then there is a slash add, and then there is a slash add again. But the difference here is a get method and a post method. I'll be explaining get and post in just a second. For now, let's just go back to the browser and see if our file is being displayed. So if you go to localhost 4000 and nothing else in front of it, you should see something like this. If you go to your HTML file right now, there'll be the first form. If you scroll down a bit on line number 12, there'll be a form. What a form tag is in HTML is basically it's used to pick up an input from the user. All right. The ones who attended the last workshop will be a little familiar with this, and whoever knows HTML will be familiar. For those who are not, it's a form tag. It contains several input tags. All right. Here you can see there's something called placeholder, and it says name, roll number, email, and password. What the placeholder is what the user sees on the screen. So if you check in the browser, it says inside the inputs, there is name, roll number, email, and password. All right. So that's what this is doing. In the form tag, there's an action and there's a method. What the method is if you hover over it in VS Code, you'll see some definitions. Post is the HTTP post method where the form data is included in the body, and get is the HTTP get method where the form data is included in the URL. I'll be explaining it in just a second. First, just in your code, I'm not sure what it is. It might be post. Please change it to get. Inside the method, in the quotations, change it to get. And now let's just go back to our file or to our browser and just give some random input in this. Make sure the email is an actual email because we are using some validation, and hit submit. It will go and submit it to slash add. If you can see in your browser, the URL has become too long, but if you focus after 4000, there's a slash add. All right. That's because of the condition that we put in. Sorry, one second. Yes, that's because in the index.html, we have put an action attribute which says slash add. So that's why it goes to the slash add. Now this is what a get request looks like. Whatever we had in the form, the name, the roll number, the email, and the password, everything just shows up in the URL. All right. So it's not really secure. And if you see if you see in the browser, the response is that this is a get request. And that's what we wrote in our endpoint also, in our app.js. That's what we wrote here, that this is a get request. So you can see even in the backend, using the request object, we can find out what the method is. So we know that the method is get. That's why we are saying this is a get request. Now let's go back and change this to post. All right. Change the method to post in the form tag. Now, if you go back to your form and make sure you refresh it, only then the changes will be implemented, and put in random values. And now if you submit it, it will again go to /add, but this time you see there's nothing in the URL. There's no form data in the URL. So this is clearly better than using a get method. Okay, in post you don't have all the values right there in the URL. Okay, and here it says this is a post request because that code worked. Our validation, our endpoint worked because we put in a condition that the method should be post. All right. So this is all that we'll be doing in pure Node.js. After this, we'll be installing Express. Now we'll be shifting to Express. So first of all, what I want you all to do is go back to your command prompt, your integrated terminal or your separate command prompt. Stop the app from running with Control C. Then it will ask you if you want to terminate it. Press Y and hit enter. It should stop the process. And now I want you to install another package, which is Express. Earlier, as you installed NodeMon, it's the same way of installing Express. Okay, so npm I express and -- save. The command will be given to you in the chat box, so don't worry if it's not clear. So what we are doing right now is similar to when we installed NodeMon. It's the same thing, but now the package name is changed. It's Express, and then -- save. -- save basically means that we only wanted to install in this folder and not this whole system. So that's how we differentiate. Like last time we wrote -g for NodeMon because we wanted it on the whole system. This time we don't want it on the whole system, and that's why we are only writing -- save and hit enter. It will take some time depending on the internet speed and your laptop. All right. So if you're facing an error with the -- save, just remove the -- save for now. So once you install Express, you'll see two new things in your folder structure. One is package log.json and the other one is node modules. In very, very brief terms, I'll explain what these are. Package log.json just keeps a track of whatever you're installing, so it won't change it. For example, if Express gets updated tomorrow and one function that we write gets outdated, so it won't stop our app from running because it will be fixed to that particular version only. And node modules is very similar to your program files in Windows. So whatever you install here with npm install, it gets saved in the node modules folder. So that's all you need to know. Now let's just start writing code for Express. So whatever you have written till now, we can just comment out everything. If you want, you can delete also, but please don't delete it because we need to compare it. Let's just comment it out with control and /. And now make sure you just remove everything. Nothing should be uncommented. And now let's just include Express like we included everything else. So require and Express. All right. And const app equals Express. So that's how you include Express and then initialize it. This is the initialization of Express in the app variable. This is the variable which we'll be using a lot. And this is the standard way of doing this. You could name it whatever you want, but app is the standard way of doing this and how we write it. Now, whatever we have written till now, I'll just quickly convert everything into Express, and I'll explain at the end how everything is the same. And I'll show you it just works the same. So you can just copy along with me. And in the end, I'll explain what's happening. It's the same again. We define a path and then there's a callback function. There are little differences, which obviously you can see. Make sure it's a double underscore right here before dir name. It's a double underscore. Don't worry, I'll be explaining everything. Whatever I'm writing, I'll explain it later. Just need to get it. All right. Let's just try to run this now, which is the same as before, Node 1 app in the terminal or in your command prompt, wherever you want to write it. Now, just as before, we are getting a confirmation in the console, server is running exactly like before. And if you go back to the browser and refresh at localhost 4000, you can again say the form. So we just enter it, enter random values in this and hit submit. As you can see, it's exactly the same response as we got last time. The URL doesn't show anything and it's there. Let's just try it once more for a GET request. You don't need to try it because it will work the same for everyone. But I'm just showing you that how we converted everything to Express instead of using plain Node.js. Now it's a GET request. It will contain everything in the URL and it says this is a GET request. So let me just quickly explain what the code is. And while I'm explaining, you can also copy down the code if something is remaining. All right. So in Express, like before, we used to write this link.pathname if that's equal to whatever endpoint we need, and the request.method is equal to whatever method we need. All right. In Express, it's very simple. We just write app.get or app.post, whatever method we are using right now. Okay. So we are using the get method. So let's just write app.get. If you are using the post method, we write app.post. Then the first parameter is the endpoint which we are explaining. Okay, so first parameter is the endpoint which we are expecting, and the second parameter is then the functions. Okay, so the function is again the same as before, a request and a response. Earlier we only had one function when we created the server, and then we had if-else conditions to differentiate between endpoints. This time we are not doing that, and we only have these we only have different functions for every time. So every time we have a add with a get method, we have a different function. If we have a add with a post method, we have a different function. And one more thing to note here is that we don't have to end the response every time. Earlier we used to write res.end and then res.write, and then we had to end the response with res.end. In Express, we can just directly write res.send and it ends the response automatically. The client already automatically knows that the response is over. One more point, what is this dir name? Make sure there's two underscores here before dir name. This basically returns the absolute path of the file which we are in right now. So dir name right now is returning something like in the C drive, then slash desktop slash the folder, something like that. And to that we are adding slash index.html, which means we are adding the absolute path of index.html because that's what we want to show in the browser. So as we are seeing right now, what Express does is it just reduces the lines of code that we need to write. So one very clear example is when we wanted to serve the file index.html to our browser, you can see that we had written like 8 lines of code for this, 7 or 8 lines of code for this. And the same thing in Express can be just written in 1 line. It's just doing the exact same thing. And let's just get to the working of the form that we have already. So first of all, one very important thing to write down before we start interacting with the form and everything is these two lines of code, which are actually really important. I'll be typing this out, and I think you'll get them in the chat also. So these are two middlewares: app.use, express, URL encoded, normal parentheses, curly brackets, extended, false, and another line which is, oh sorry, need to come outside this, yes, and another app.use, express.json. All right. So what this is doing is, first of all, let's understand what is app.use. App.use is written whenever we want to put a middleware. Now, what a middleware is, if you think of the client and server, so in their middle comes middleware. That's why it's named like that. So what a middleware does is, whenever client sends something, so we are asking it to first run this, because this is inside app.use, which is a middleware, which is used for running middlewares. So this part of the code runs before the request is handled by the server. It runs before that because it's middleware. And similarly, this also does the same thing. So in very basic terms, what these two lines of code is doing is, when we are sending information from the form back to the server, we want it to be in a readable format. We want the server to know what it's written. Okay. So now let's start working with this. First of all, let me just show you one property of the request object, which is request.body. Okay. And let me just send something back to the client also, so that we can see the response also. All right. So right now, I think it should be working. Yes, our server is running. Let's go back to the form. Make sure you refresh, and also make sure that the method is set to post now, because we have deleted the get. Okay, let's just change this to post. Okay, so now you can see we only have two routes, the slash and the slash add with a post. Just remove the get request, we don't need it now. Okay, so now in the add, go back to the form. We also changed the method in index.html to post. Go back to the form, fill out the form with whatever you want. Set a password, anything you want. Just hit submit. It says cannot get add. Okay, so I guess I didn't refresh it. 1 second. Yes, the method is set to post. I think I didn't refresh it. Let's just go back and just type in anything and submit. Yes. So this time it says check the console, because that's what we said in our handler. And if you go in the console, you can see a object which we have seen previously, like the syntax we have seen previously, and it contains the information of the form. Someone was asking me earlier where does the form information is going. Here it is. We can access it by using request.body. Okay, it's an object with the name, roll number, email, and password. Now, how these names are coming, like these names of the properties, how is it name, how is it RNO, how is it email. So let me just show you in the HTML. In the input tags, we have put in a method, an attribute called name. This is what controls the name which goes ahead. Name, email, name, RNO, name, email, name, password. This is what is controlling the name. If you change anything in this, that change will reflect here also in the request.body. Okay, I hope this is clear and everybody is getting this output in their console. So, and I did this in the post method, make sure, and the method was also sent to post. Okay, now let's just move forward and let's actually start building out something. So now when someone is filling up the sign up form, we want it to store it somewhere. Okay, in an actual real world scenario, we'll be storing it in a database. But since today is a beginner friendly workshop, we'll just be storing it in a JSON file in our system itself. So go ahead and click on new file. Make sure you are inside this folder only and create a db.json file. db.json. All right, you'll get a file. If you can't find the icon for it, just right click and you'll get an option of new file. The first option, create the file. It will open up in your editor. Put some curly braces, hit enter, and inside double quotes write users colon, and then square brackets. So if you remember from earlier, this is what a JSON object looks like: curly braces, quotations around the key, and then the value is an empty array right now. The square brackets are for arrays. Now, why is it an empty array? Because we haven't added any users in this. Now let's add a user in this. How we do that is, first we need to get this file db.json. All right. So let's go here, and we need to put in two variables. First of all, we already have okay. Let's just write it again. Const fs. We need the file system module again. You can just copy paste from what you wrote earlier, or you can just write it again. Doesn't matter. Let's just define a file name, because we'll be using it again and again. So let's just keep it in a variable, which is db.json. Okay. We have the file name. If you remember, this is how we did the index.html also. In fs.read file, that's what we use, file name. So that we are just putting it into another variable. Now, if you come back here, what you need to do is get that db file. All right. So you need to read that file. How you read the file is, earlier we used fs.read file. So it's the same again. But this time, just for having something different, let's use a little bit different function, which is read file sync. Now, if you remember in the PPT, we were talking about synchronous and asynchronous. So this is what a synchronous function looks like. This is called read file sync. Sync here stands for synchronous. Now, what will happen is it will change the built-in behavior of Node.js. When it comes to line number 41, and if it's taking some time to read the file, it will stop here and then move forward. This you don't really need in a production level environment, because you don't want your server to slow down for something. But right now, just for showing a difference, I'm writing the sync function. All right. And I've stored it in a variable called data. Let me also write. Let me just show you what the data looks like. Okay. Console.log data. Now let me just show you what this returns. Now, if you go back to your form and fill it up with random data, this time I don't think you need to refresh it. It will work. And click submit. It should say check the console. Okay, sorry, not this file. Yes. Now, if you look at your console, it should give you some buffer data like this. Now, from the earlier, when we used the console.log on the request object, we got some data, but this time we are just getting a buffer. And because of this, we need to parse it into JSON. All right. So we'll use let db equal to json.parse. Parse, as I said earlier, is another term for conversion. So we are converting it into a JSON object, and we write json.parse and data inside it. Now let's console log db and see what's the difference. Earlier we had console log data directly. Now let's console log db. All right. Go back to our form and submit it again. Yes, this time we get the object back. All right. So that's why we need to do the json.parse. I hope it's clear. That's why we can't directly use data. We have to convert it into JSON. Okay, now moving forward. Now what we want is, we need that request.body object, right? Because that's what contained our user. So let's just save it into a variable called called user, and we can write let user equal to request.body. And here we need to get that array. So db.users will contain that array. I hope this much is clear by now, because that's a property inside the object, db.users. And now a built-in function in JavaScript called push. What this does is add another element to the array. All right. Whatever element you pass here will be added to whatever array you call this function on. So this gets passed. Okay, so this is pushed here, but the thing is, we are only pushing it to this variable. We are not changing anything in the file. So that's why we need to change the file also. So after this, we'll do fs.write file. Again, coming back to the asynchronous way of doing this. So write file name, because that's what contains the database, the db.json, all right? And we'll be writing db, the object which we got. And then any error that's expected, and then the code, then the function. So if there is an error, let's just console.log that error, that we got an error. And if there is no error, let's send back a response saying user added. All right. Now we can remove this res.send because we don't need it. Please make sure you've written this correctly. One thing we need to change in this is because this DB, we have passed it into JSON. We again have to change it into a JSON string for it to work with write file, because write file is not capable of writing JSON objects into a file. We need to change it into a normal string. So how we do that is we write a piece of code, json.stringify, and just put db inside it. json.stringify will have some parentheses with db around it. All right. So I guess now if we submit the form, we should see some changes in the file. Till now, the file is still empty. The array is still empty. Now let's just go back to our form. Refresh the page, fill in some random details, and submit the form. There's user added. Let's make sure it was added. If we click on db.json, yes, we can see an object right here. Okay. It contains all the properties. Now, as you can see, it doesn't look very readable. So let's change it. And how we do that is inside the stringify method, add two more things, null and dash t, backspace t. So this null and backspace t. So what this does is this null is called a replacer. Okay, so if you want to replace anything in the object, we don't want to replace anything. So we'll just keep it null. And this is the spacing between different levels. So we want to give it a tab space. If you're familiar with C, then you would have used this backspace t or backspace n also. So let's just use backspace t so that it gives us a nice spacing. So this time, let's add another user. Let's just name it and give it an email, and let's give it a password and submit. Okay, so .com. Make sure the email looks legit, and then if you go back, this time the db.json file will have it a better way. So let's now start working on the read functionality. All right, we want to view whatever the users are in the database. Okay, so let's make that. First, in your index.html, you would see there's a link here within an a tag. For those who are not familiar with HTML, this is an a tag which is used to put in links in your document, right? You can, whatever you write here will show up in your document. Like, 1 second. I just go back. Like here, you can see view all users. If you go to your localhost 4000, you can see that. And the href is for what link you wanted to go to. So you wanted to go to /view. This is very similar to what the action attribute in the form was. So in the action attribute, we wrote /add, and that's what we defined a route for here. So similarly, that's what we're going to do here. Let's create another endpoint, app.get with /view. Okay. Request.response, response, and create a function. Just create another endpoint just like before. And this time, let's just get all the data from the file, DB file, like we did earlier. We need to get this every time so that we are sure that we are getting the updated version and we are not getting some old version of the file. So that's why we need to read the file again with file name and convert it into JSON again. It's the same thing. We're just doing this to make sure that we have the correct version. This is not pass data, the same as before. All right. And now, Okay, there's one more thing in this, is that we need to write a header for this, like we wrote while we were doing HTML, sorry, normal HTTP server. So it's very similar. If you want, you can just copy paste from before also. We wrote this before. It's going to be the exact same thing. Content type text slash HTML. It's the exact same thing from before. If you want, you can copy this line. And okay, why are we doing this? I'll let you know in just 1 second. Now there's one line of HTML that we need to write. Okay. Let's go to your index.html page. Okay. Scroll down inside the body tag, wherever you want. Just write down a table. Hit tab, so it will give you a table tag. I will explain it in just 1 second what it does, but right now just try to write it. And th, which will be name. You write the same thing twice, 2 times more. I just copied the above line 2 times. That's all I did. Now what I'm doing right now is not really needed in like in a Node.js environment. I'm just doing it so that it's visible, the data is visible properly. All right. And let's just write a row again. id of, we don't want this to show up in the HTML page, but the reason I'm writing this here is because I get the autocomplete from VS Code, so I can write it down faster. That's all this is. Okay. So now what we want is just remove all of these line breaks that are here. Just go to the end of the line and delete everything. Don't keep the line breaks. If this doesn't work for you, don't worry, because the code is a little bit messy. But if you just understand what I'm doing in the node part, it will be fine, I think. Yeah. So just copy this first line now, leaving one tr tag below, and paste it inside this in the res.write. All right. Now we need to go through the array. In DB, we have the database, the users which we want. Now we need to go through the array. If you remember earlier, I told you what the for each is, and we'll be using it here. Now inside this, if you notice, I'm not using any parentheses around this attribute. This is because in the arrow function, if there's only one attribute, you don't need to put like parentheses like this. For now, let's just put it so that you guys can understand it's a attribute, the user. And write another res.write. This time, instead of using quotes, use backticks like we used earlier. Sorry, we didn't use it. This is the first time we are using it. Backticks are basically below the escape key and right next to your number 1 on your keyboard. It's a backtick. Make sure it's not a single quote and it's a backtick. We'll be needing this. I'll be explaining why we need this in just a second. Now again, this PR from beginning to end. Just cut it short. Remove all the line breaks that we have. All right. And just copy this line also. And paste it in the res.write again. Now, what these backticks do is that it enables us to write variables also inside the strings. So inside the string, we have this HTML tags. Now these will be explained, what do I say? This will be formatted accordingly because we are using text/HTML like we did earlier, the h1 tag which was getting displayed. If we write plain, then it just will show this TD directly. And if we are using HTML, it will show the HTML element actually. And this is how you write variables inside a template string. Okay, $, curly braces, and then the variable inside it. This user is coming from this variable right here, for each. Okay, and then you write res.write. Then the last thing which is remaining is the closing table tag. Now, for those of you who don't know HTML or are not familiar with this table tag, I'll just explain in 1 second what this does. So if you just undo everything, for better readability. Yeah. So the table tag is opening here and closing here. Now this tr is basically a table row, and this th is table head. So these are used for headings, and this td is table data, which are used for normal elements. Now if I just go back and I show you what this does, then you'll understand this better. And even if this seems complicated, just leave it for now because we don't really need it for our Node.js thing. I just wanted to show the users in a better way. So that's why I'm writing this code. If you don't understand it, just leave it. It doesn't matter that much. Now, if you go to view all users, as you can see, it's getting formatted in a table style. So that was the only purpose of writing it this way. If you want, you can just change it also. So if you didn't understand it, just you can leave it. I just wanted to show how you can see every user. Instead of doing all this, you could also do a console.log here, and you could see in the console. I just wrote it so that you can see it in the browser. Okay. Now moving ahead and creating a update functionality, because in the CRUD, after read was update. All right. So let's just create this. So if you can see, there's another form. It's just taking the roll number, whichever roll number we want to update, and the email of the person that we want to update. It's a post method, and it goes to /update. So let's just define this endpoint now. So by now you should know that for a post method, we write it like this. Then the endpoint was /update. So like write /update. Then again request comma response, and then this. So how do we update it actually? Because we are using a file inside our folder, we'll do the same thing again. Let data equal to fs. Let me just copy it for saving time. These two lines is the same again. And we also need the roll number, which is there in the form. So if you remember, the request.body contains everything that the form has. We need the roll number right now. So let's just get it out by RNO. And now we need to update in the array, right? So let's just go through the array with a for each, a user, which is the element of the array. And then if the user's roll number matches with the roll number that we just entered, because this RNO is coming from request.body. So if it matches, we want to change the email, user.email. We want it to change to request.body.email. Right? That's all we are doing. And once again, as before, we need to change the file also. So for this, let's just copy the earlier code that we wrote inside the add syntax. Okay. /add endpoint. Let's just copy the same code again, because it's going to be exactly the same. Let's just change the update that we gave to the user. Let's just say email updated. So let's just say email updated, and let's see how this works. So if you go back to your browser and go back to your form, here in update a user's email, inside the enter the roll number. Let me just check what the roll numbers are. So let's just change the second one. The roll number is 43. So let's go here, put 43 in, and write a new email. Let's just go with arindam@gmail.com. If you click update, it says email updated. Now to check, if you wrote this code, you can go here and check. It says arindam@gmail, or else you can go in the db.json file and you can see that the email has been changed for roll number 43. All right. So this is all we had for today. The CRUD functionality is almost done. The delete functionality, I'll leave it up to you, because it's basically the same thing. Instead of updating this, whatever roll number the users enter, we need to get that that user out of the array, and that's it.